سلام سلام حكيم والسلام للناس المستمعين. صوتي واضح؟
يا
الناس
واضح.
اي قبل ما ابدا اي حاجه انا بس عندي سؤال اندر نسالك اول قبل ما ابدا.
go ahead.
اي في كلام ناس قاعدين يونسوا انه في هنا ده بيقولوا شنو راوند تيبل. ناس they are focusing on round table لانه في حاجات التانيين ده بقى ما اشتغل. هم دايرين يرجعوا round table اللي هو consensus forum. هل كان الزموك أسا EPA يتحدون معهم؟
Yeah, thank you for the first of all for coming up and also for your question. I think this started probably since last year. National Consensus Forum ده كانوا بيطرحوا فكرة بتاعت أنه الناس تعمل people have to address the issues in South Sudan in the form of a roundtable conference and so on. لكن there was a prejudgment على أساس أنه they wanted this process to lead to the formation of a technocratic government. Right? هنا كنا عندنا بعض the reservations. The principle of dialogue itself is not an issue for us. لأنه في النهاية تلاقي بتاعت الأفكار is helpful to generate consensus. To generate consensus. لكن القضية اللي كان حاصل عنه دول اللي بيتكلموا عن باسم بتاع national consensus ده ما جادين. They are not, they were not really trying to be open. They wanted to control the process to serve the interests of to serve vested interests يعني بمعنى آخر. لكن القضية اللي هو المبدأ بتاعت أنه الناس تكون عندها الديالوج process ده ما عندنا فيه مشكلة. لأنه في النهاية برضو أنت ممكن تقدر تطلع بمقترحات أو ما ممكن تقدر تسموه definition of the way forward. Okay, what's the way forward? And which might be able to generate the largest consensus possible عشان الناس بعدك تقدر تعمل تقدر تعمل to serve that way forward, that objective. احنا كنا بنطالب for a long time, and that's why sometimes it matters to who is saying it. احنا كنا اتكلمنا عن قضية بتاعت تجمع أو تحالف بتاعت الشعب من أجل الحرية والديمقراطية. We talked about that, and but still we talked about how we can form a process in which we can begin to talk about the alternative way forward. What is the way forward? إحنا اتكلمنا في القضية ده قبل before even the consensus forum or national consensus forum was born. That NC القريب ده كويس. We talked about it. بس أنه كان في بعض الإحصائية. يعني you'll find that those who are running the national consensus forum, they don't want other voices. نقولها بالوضوح. They don't want others to have a say in the process. They appoint themselves to be the arbiters of who should be admitted and who should not be admitted to this consensus thing or to the round table. It is not a transparent process. ففي ناس عاوزين يمسكوها من العصا من طرف معين to sort of like direct it in their own way. and in the process try to exclude others. والمفروض أساسا شنو ما تكون في مبادئ, and there should be principles of how you want to run this thing, right? You should have principles which are transparent, فيها وضوح, that أنه, you know, the purpose of this is to do this and this and this, and these are the terms and conditions. كده. And then this can be made subject to public debate, made subject to public scrutiny, right? So that people are freely motivated to join this, not because somebody is like manipulating the process. We don't want manipulation. One of the big examples. شوف مثلا زي هنا بتاعت سانتيجيديو. The process, the peace process في سانتيجيديو. It became an exclusive club. It became an exclusive club that was Pagana Moon, Molong, Thomas, and so on. So if you are not a member of Soma, then you are excluded. They even went there further and they divided themselves up. So far, if you're at the center of trying to rally consensus, you have to be transparent about it. You have to be open and inclusive about the different views and shades of opinion. Because at the end of the day, you want all of these voices, all of these opinions to be in this process so that you can reflect the true consensus of, you know, what the, you know, people think, right? والمفروض تكون كده. فإحنا مبدئيا ما بنرفض فكرة بتاعت أنه people can go to a round table to talk to each other, right? You call it round table, you call it whatever it might be, right? لكن شنو? The key is that أنه the member جامع بمعنى الكلمة member جامع. People can have different views, different positions and so on. لكن أنت بتكون عندك member الجامع ده to bring about reconciliation of all these different shades of opinion to get to a point where there is some consensus of the way forward, right? That's what we consider to be, you know, like consensus. And then people can, because even if you go to a round table, there is no guarantee that you will succeed. هنا ممكن نقعد كده معاك في التيبل في round table and we don't agree. Then what does being in a round table will actually lead to an agreement? So ما في guarantees. لكن ممكن تكون في, you know, coming together and discussing certain issues, you could start to prioritize what is more important that is agreeable. بعد ذاك ممكن تسمي that this is a consensus. لكن انت ما ممكن تقدر تكون نفسك بس كده براك انا قال احنا بتاع consensus وانتوا ذاتهم منقسمين على انفسكم ومنقسمين مع, you know, from others, you know. So how can you describe yourself to be a consensus forum, right? It is prejudging and jumping the gun and putting the cart before the horse, right? Because you already define yourself to be the consensus. طيب احنا هنجيك في consensus بتاعتك ده كيف؟ We might differ with this consensus that you have. Then how do you prejudge yourself and reach the conclusion that انت بقيت a whole consensus قبل ما تجلس وتتناقش مع الأطراف الثانية, right? So I think, you know, قضية بتاعت round table وقضية بتاعت consensus, these are two different things. انت ممكن تقدر تعمل round table in order to reach to a consensus. Okay, that is feasible. You can organize a round table, and then through this round table, you can reach to a consensus. Okay? والناس اللي قاعدين بيقولوا انه هم الكونسنسس ده there are two things that messages. في message الثاني بيقول المسج الأول ممكن يقول إنه شنو we already have a consensus, we have defined the consensus خلاص يعني, so we are the consensus. ده الرسالة اللي أنت بتقدر تفهمه. والرسالة الثانية رسالة بتاعت إنه أنت ممكن تضع نفسك كadvocacy group for consensus. يعني you are advocating for consensus. You are advocating for consensus, and so you call yourself the consensus, or for example, the National Consensus Forum. Let's take that for an example. And if we say National Consensus Forum, so through this National Consensus Forum, right, you are either already predetermining it, على أساس إنه خلاص أنت وصلت ل National Consensus Forum, or you are in the process of trying to advocate for a national consensus. كده. ده أنا بفهمه كده. So, فالقضيتين, these are two different issues. There can be a group that wants to advocate for building the national consensus, right? And that is their right, okay? But they have to be then inclusive. Then we need to know what are their terms of reference, okay? Or if they are not a group that is saying we've already defined the national consensus, خلاص معناه الباب بيكون قفل. مش كده؟ انت بيكون الباب بتاعك بيكون قفل. You've already closed the door. You've said that you have defined what the national consensus is, and that's it. But I think that's not their position. أنا بفهمهم على أساس إنه هم مجموعة that wants to build national consensus. Okay? That's how I look at it. A round table is one of the tools and mechanisms for bringing dialogue, for bringing about dialogue, and people can talk in order to reach a consensus. كده. فمن هذا المنطلق, as long as it is not, subject to and controlled by vested interests, احنا ما عندنا مشكلة. بنقدر نشارك وبنقدر نستفيد من المنبر to drive consensus. But this is what we're trying to do last time in the Nadafa. Okay, now People's New Alliance for Democracy and Freedom Action. It is not by imposition. احنا بنقول انه احنا المفروض نكون عندنا التفاف حول قضية بتاعت الديمقراطية والحريات. قضية بتاعت الديمقراطية والحريات في جنوب السودان. ده ممكن يكون مدخل لشنو؟ مدخل للالترناتيف واي فورورد. لانه احنا بناخذ نموذج بتاع شنو؟ بناخذ نموذج بتاع الديمقراطيه، بناخذ نموذج بتاع الحريات، وده ممكن تكون مدخل للحوار. مش كده؟ مدخل للحوار. The entry for us to generate the way forward is to be guided by the principles and values of democracy and freedom. So we should stand for democracy and freedom. All of us should stand for democracy and freedom. And we insisted that this has to be a people-driven thing. It has to be a people-driven process. عشان نقدر شنو؟ نكون inclusive for all the different shades of opinions. ما يكون بس أنه أحزاب أو مثلا حركات سياسية بمنع عن الشعب، بمنع عن شنو؟ participation of civil society, for example, participation by individuals, concerned citizens, professional associations, وهكذا. لأنه الحريات أو الحرية والديمقراطية كويس ده ملك لكل القطاعات في الشعب. ده ملك للindividuals، ملك لل institutions like civil society، ملك مهنيين وكده وهكذا إلى آخره. مش كده؟ And it has to be people driven because it will focus on the agenda بتاعت constitution making مثلا, for example, as one of the principles of the consensus. أنه إحنا كلنا نتفق حول القضايا بتاعت أنه إحنا how do we make the constitution making process a people driven process مثلا. بدل ما يكون elites driven process or political parties driven process or Kir and React driven process. كده احنا ممكن نقدر to generate consensus that way. If we can go about it this way, we can generate consensus. وكل زول عنده يعني فرصة كانت individual ولا كانت party ولا كانت شنو. It doesn't matter. What matters is that everybody has a chance to influence. And you cannot guarantee that only a political organization or movement, this or that, will be the one that will influence the outcome. Everything will depend on these collective contributions of all the, parties that involve themselves in this process in order to generate that consensus. فإحنا بننظر له بهذا الشكل يعني. As EPA, Equatorial People's Alliance, we are open to this. عشان كده إحنا ذاته we found ourselves as Equatorial People's Alliance. To put the people first. And what the people can do, what the people can bring to the. ومن هذا المنطلق إحنا عندنا constituency. And now, if our constituency is organized, then our constituency can also be effective in contributing to things like, roundtable conferences, or because you need to go there as an organized body. Your ideas are organized, they are structured, you have policies, you have, objectives, and you want to make these ideas, these policies attractive. In such a conference or in such a roundtable conference, you go with ideas that you have thought through, you go with ideas and policies that you have thought through, that you want to, win those who are attending the roundtable conference, win them to your side of the argument, right? That's what we want to do. But if somebody is exclusive and they don't want us to be there, then how are we going to be able to make contribution? So how are we going to be able to make contribution? So we need to be inclusive. We need to be tolerant of the different shades of opinion, because it's only then that we are promoting democratic values and liberty and freedoms for people to freely participate. ما هنا بنتكلم دائما بنتكلم عن الحرية بتاعت شنو؟ freedom of assembly, freedom of association, right? It's not compulsive. It has to be freedom of association and freedom of participation. Create the conditions for freedom of participation and freedom of assembly. That is what it is. I hope I have answered your question, Sylvia. Well, you can take the floor. Further.
Welcome, Margaret.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Silvana. Thank you, Dr. Hakim. I would also want to thank the audience, and I am happy to participate and to add my voice to this very timely topic. I am glad that it's being recorded so that we have that record for people to refer to as we continue trying to resolve the issue called South Sudan. So first of all, I want to reiterate again what Dr. Hakim has said, and other people have also alluded to. Sovereignty belongs to the people. That is power. Power belongs to the people. And they are the ones who actually have the authority to decide what should happen in that territory called South Sudan. And a lot of you have heard me numerous times referring to that territory, because it is really a territory now. It's not being run by norms and democratic norms or norms guiding states. Right now, everything has fallen apart. And if the people were really organized, they could actually take over because it's their power that has now been, that is being abused. So I also want to reiterate what has already been said about the extension, the so-called extension being illegal. It is an illegal extension because the people have not been involved. The sovereign people haven't not been involved in discussions relating to the extension. Any extension, any rule over a people needs their permission. You can't just impose yourself anywhere. All systems need the people's permission for you to rule over them. Even kings need the people's permission. They are the sovereign, and they grant a king permission to rule over them. This has never happened. This hasn't happened in South Sudan, and so the extension is illegal. Really, so literally, right now, people can actually take over the state. And there's supposed to be a constitution, but really that constitution has been violated left, right, and center. And I have also referred to the so-called government as a criminal cartel. That whole system is a criminal cartel, and I've written quite extensively about that. So there's absolutely no accountability. And when you're a criminal cartel, you ought to be treated as criminals. And the reason why these people are still asserting themselves over the people of the territories because they are armed. They're armed and dangerous. And I've said it before. I'm going to repeat it again. That it is now time for people to protect themselves. It's your right to protect yourself against armed criminals. It's a right in law. If someone violates your rights and puts in harm's way, you have the right to protect yourself and fight back. And I have said repeatedly that this is not even about fighting somebody. It's just about self-defense. It's about defending yourself. It's about protecting yourself against a criminal, a bunch of criminals. So really, it is time for people to institute a protection force to protect yourselves, not to go and fight a war in this day and age. So it's your right to do that. So this criminal cartel continues to inflict crimes against the people of the territory. And the so-called state, that they are flaunting and they're using to give themselves permission to continue their criminal activities, their lawlessness, and operating with impunity, completely no accountability, stealing and looting resources, and operating without rules. I had Dr. Kim giving reference to the fact that sometimes these criminal cartel members appoint themselves and they give themselves permission to loot from the state and just ask for money from the state for burials. The death is an awful thing, and we have to be somber about death. But if the state decides that they should bury people, they should fund, provide resources for funerals, then everyone needs to be provided that service. It can't be selective, like you cannot be selective, and you can't just self-appoint and say, and choose who benefits from that service. Everybody needs to have access to that service, and it needs to be a law or a rule. And it's not happening right now. So this criminal cartel and its members just go ahead and loot from the state and take from the states, from the state without any rules. So that to me needs to stop, and the people need to step forward and just really put a stop to this. I realize that the criminal cartel is fully armed, but the people can arm themselves too. Like there are ways you can arm yourself for self-defense, for protection. And this is something that I'm not shy to say out loud and to proclaim in rooftops, because I think everybody has the right to self-defense. Everybody has the right to be protected. Everyone has the right to safety and security. And it's missing in that territory. And that's the reason why it's time for people to come together and institute a protection force to protect themselves from the lawless cartel. Dr. Hakim talked about rethinking the state. And I think this is what EPA has been talking about for a very, very long time. It is necessary to rethink that space, that territory, and see what people want out of it now, because it has completely disintegrated. So there's a need now to rethink it. And Silvana, you asked a question about the roundtable and the relationship with the national consensus. I want to also agree with what Dr. Hakim stated in his response. Yes, a roundtable really should not be predetermined. A roundtable is supposed to bring people together to talk about what they want, what they can agree on, which in this case is a national consensus. But when you do that, when you do a roundtable, you do not predetermine the outcome. You do not. There's so much conflict happening in that territory called South Sudan right now. So there's a need to hear all the voices. There's obviously conflict because people don't agree. So to obtain consensus, which the National Consensus Forum is attempting to do, you have to bring all the voices, even the ones you don't agree with. So you cannot stage manage a roundtable that is intended to attain consensus. You cannot stage manage it. You cannot manipulate it. You cannot predetermine the outcome. It has to be a free flow of conversation, of proposals. But it has to be properly organized. It has to be a properly structured agenda. And it has to be facilitated by someone who is objective, or someone who has the ability to be objective, to just look at what, to basically facilitate the session, the round table, so that all the voices are heard. And there are tools these days, like what we're doing right now. You don't even have to come to a location, because the logistics, are just impossible. Like if you try to come to a single location, so you can do this online. You can do this virtually. You can do this remotely, and in that way, more people can participate. Everyone's voice needs to be factored in, even the voices that you don't agree with, the voices that you're trying to stifle. The problem is that there's so much conflict in that territory called South Sudan right now. When you try to stifle voices, it's just going to explode. So it's not even recommended. It's not advisable to stage manage and manipulate the process and predetermine an outcome. It's not. And I think we've all seen what that does. When you predetermine an outcome, someone is not going to be happy. That's the reason why you have to listen to all the voices and why they are in conflict and why they don't agree with some things. You got to listen, and you have to outline how you're going to resolve some of their apprehensions. But a roundtable is a great start, where everybody comes together. And we can do that virtually, like what we're doing right now. This is like a roundtable, actually. So it is important to problem solve, and that's what we need to do now. The extension, I agree, it's just a criminal cartel extending itself, and it's illegal, actually. And the reason why everybody, like especially the international community, is keeping quiet is because of the principle of sovereignty. They're treating that territory as a state because they can't treat it as anything else. There aren't too many options. There are not too many options in international law other than the state system right now. So that's the only thing they have. And that's the reason why they are keeping quiet. They are, they're leaving it up to the people of the state, actually. So the people of that territory actually have more power than they think they do. They've been bullied into believing that they don't have any power, but yes, you actually possess the power, and you, the people, can actually come in now and take over. The only thing that I think is stopping that from happening is lack of consensus. It's like a catch-22 right now, where you need consensus to overthrow, to kick them out, to really, because they're illegitimate and illegal. There's not much involved in kicking them out. You just assert your power and take over. But you have to speak with one voice, and I believe that's what the National Consensus Forum is trying to do. But they're not doing it properly because they are excluding people and they are cherry picking, and you cannot do that. You can't do that if you're trying to form a consensus. You can't cherry pick. Everybody needs to be in on it and say have their say. So that is what is missing right now. That's the only thing between that criminal cartel and the people is lack of organization. Because if the people were organized, they could just take over their power, take it back, because it has been abused. So there are other ways, to take over, to just take your power back. Just take it back. It's not even like a takeover. It's like taking your power back because the country has failed, it is disintegrated. So it's time to take your power back so that you can go back and rethink what you want. And there's been a lot of different proposals. Some people have proposed federalism, other people have proposed confederation, and some EPA members have proposed a union state. So it is time to come together and rethink and talk about those proposals. Even the ones you don't agree. You can't simply say no. You cannot have like this system, or you can't have this system without making your case, without presenting your reasons. And I think a roundtable would do just that. Coming together, but it needs to be properly organized so that everyone has a say, and everyone, can debate. You cannot mimic the criminal cartel, because what that criminal cartel called SPLA is trying to do is to impose itself on the people. I'm venturing to say that, you see, if they treated the people well, I don't even think they would mind the imposition. The only problem is that they're a criminal cartel and they're looting the people, they're mistreating the people. And they're just basically criminals. They don't have that right now. So people have to take back their power and just literally go back to the drawing board. It's quite possible to go back to the drawing board, and no one is going to tell you that. You're going to have to organize yourselves and say, this is what we're doing. And I believe the Roundtable Forum and the National Consensus Forum are trying to do that. But like I said, it needs to be properly implemented, not the way they're doing it to like hoodwink people and elbow people out. You cannot succeed like that. So that's why it's really important. And that's why this conversation is very important. And it's very, very important to bring to light the fact that it's a criminal cartel and it's extending itself. It's literally holding people down, like it has that cartel has guns to people's heads. And that's the reason why it's so important now for people to protect themselves. Discuss a way how to protect yourself from a criminal cartel that does not have your best intentions at heart. That is passing themselves as the government, but they're really not. So it's time to step in and intervene and basically interrupt that cartel. And you're quite capable. You're quite capable of doing it. There are ways to interrupt that cartel, and we can have these many discussions. So this is just one of many discussions, and I'm happy to be part of this discussion. And I recommend more discussions to just continue the conversation and the threads that we've started here, so that there can be a resolution to that failed state, before it completely disintegrates. And the consequences of disintegration are actually worse. So I'm just gonna end here for now, and we'll be listening. Thank you, Silvana. Thank you, Kim and Loco.
Loco, welcome. You can take the floor. Thank you.
Just give me 5 minutes, I will be here. I will be back. Let me finish something in front of you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Itakununu sukulu is Hakim, Margaret, all is good. Bas mishkala ino bad marat. We are just wondering like anusul funukta de kef. Anu hakuma takir wala hakuma ta SPLM de ma jadid. Au galta minanna, we give them a lot of time for them to maneuver. Someone bigger goey, kalas bigger sub. And they take everything into granted. So they mun bigger gala mamukta nas mamukta junubin. Umun gaidi no hatu mun kanamulu. Junubin ba'amul shin, junubin ma ba'amul ay haja. Junubin kulu kaskut. Kande siyasin, wala de civil society, wala hatta ordinary junubin al-gisafa kul yom. Itab, imutu, jaan, displaced, you name it. Ana marbukun hakuma takir, hakuma SPLM. Umunain fi sagara, fi weakness between South Sudanese. Inu fi haja al-bukutu hakuma de rasto fok kulu wekit ma'amul zewader. Unasal kulu fi hakuma de umun kulu SPLM. يعني حتى هم كان جمع اسم تاني SPLM فلان SPLM فلان في النهاية هم كله SPLM. so ما بكون حاجة غريب لأننا أشرنا باينه كل يوم في extension بس people will go behind the doors ونتفق لأنه رياك كان قايلينه وجودته في حكومة دي يقول تاب للجنوبين ومفروض بتالا قال يا جماعة enough is enough. أنا ما دايرة إنه الجنوبين كده صعبة للدرجة ده. If I'm the reason I'm resigning. هل حكومة تكير بقدر وقدام؟ لا ما بقدر وقدام لأنه دي اتفاقية. أنا قايل في النهاية ناس اتفقوا ناس عنده حاجة لأنه كان ما زي ده مو بعد يزيدوا هنا ده من 200 قلنا ما بقدر كان قال بكون في يوم تاني ملايكة تاني بيجا عشان بيجا يعني ليزو ناس برا. South Sudanese people are already spoken. The national, what is that? Can you guys remind me? The national dialogue. South Sudanese gali numun maderin riak wale kir. De ma kifaya, de mafrut de hajal nas biamsuku nafarende fogu. Khalik nas salbagin. عشان ما في وحدة كمان وقبلية بقى كتير عشان كده عشان الناس بيلقوا بلد ده بعدين أو بكون صعب. كان الناس ما وحدوا عشان الناس بتالا قوين عشان يطلع حكومة SPLM ده برا. يعني SPLM مسا feeling they are entitled to rule this country. زمن قونس قالوا من شاكل 21 سنة يعني من قاين إنه ده حقهم لكنهم منقطبين ما في زولتان جور زولتان من جوبيتو قالوا شاكل عشان في النهاية يتدير كون أمسك بلد ده بقى زي حقك زي بيتك. رياك بقى رياك ولا كير بقى زي السلطان قرية. جنوب السودان بقى تالا قرية ما دولة بقى قرية يعني الزول بقى سلطان بقى حتى السلطان ذاته ما عنده حق في كوميونيتي حقه يعني ما في سلطان تاني برا بتالا من كوميونيتي ببدأ يتصرف وينده كابينت وينده ناس من كله كلانتس وينده ناس يعني هو بيشاوروا ناس لكن ما في وصل لإنه للدرجة كتير بقى جاء بوينت ناس حتى غفير ذاته أو بقدر ساك أو بقدر بوينت زول وصل للدرجة دي. وإننا قاسكت إننا جاي نقول منيا بيجا. For me, the deal has been done already. Azo hasa dekere nas rijali muida. حتى كان ناس عنده مشاكل شنو دي سياسة ولا دي شنو كده ناس كنت aside. I don't think even we have time. Our people are suffering. أكتر من أننا كان ذاته جي imagine. Why is this? يعني أنا ما أعرف والله. For them to come and extend 2 years, this is another suffering for 2 years. هل أن إحنا قبلانين بدا ولا نمشي في إنترنت نقول كير must go, رياك must go, hashtag أي حاجة زول تاني يجي مغنى يغنوا كير must go, رياك must go, hashtag. We have to do something. لأنه نما بقدر كتب بالي ناس تانيين زي أسري بيتك في حريقة نار ولا في بيتك إتا بيكوريني مو يلبسي تانو تبارا كوبو كوبو جيران باينو جيران بيجا ساديتا لكن إنت كمان كناس كنت بيدي ما بحرقو تالا رومات في شنو تستفيد مني وانت ما يستفيد أي حاجة. أنا بوقفني لكم. If you are now done, please take the floor. Thank you, guys.
Shukran. Dr. Hakim, I greet you. Thank you for the invitation to the room and opening this room with the topic above. Thank you, Sylvia and Margaret, and our listeners down there. Hakim, I thank you once again, and I'm happy to be in your show today. I think for the first time, I happen to be in your show. I agree with the topic. There is nothing else that the so-called government in South Sudan has done. They are criminals, cartel, everything. I think the South Sudanese really know exactly what type of government is. They are worse ones. I have a Jamaican friend, they were saying for them in Jamaica, they kill their victims. Like if they are going to rob, they kill theirs. You have to kill and then you take whatever wealth you want. But Africans are very smart. Even if they are stealing or if they are robbing somebody, they don't kill because they know that if they kill, they are not gonna have somebody to be robbed again. That's why they say Africans used to be smart. But the government of South Sudan is ready to kill and is killing people and robbing them. This is very clear. They are typical criminal cartels. That's why I agree with you. And the victims, who are the South Sudanese citizens, are of course paying the brand. And I've given you. Some have resorted for the self-protection, self-defense, whatever means for them to survive. The politicians that claim to be representing them are not caring about them, and they are ready to kill them. Those in the government, those who are in the parliament, claiming to be working for them, speaking for them, they are not caring about them. And that's why today we see a lot of groupings talking about getting rid of this government, or at least bring change. A lot of groups are over there, to the point that individuals are even by themselves sometimes considering themselves just I am alone, and that's it. And brilliant ideas from these groups that has a feeling that this government has to go, and then a change to improve or to save the lives of our people, they are there. The question now is how to bring these ideas together. I'm seeing this is a problem to all of us. to all of the groups. Sister Salvana here mentioned something about disunity. Individuals are disunited. They cannot listen to themselves. Communities could not listen to themselves. Opposition groups could not listen to themselves. The question of what do you call it? People coming together so that those ideas could be put together, so that a framework or roadmap so that people work together as oppositions is really, really struggling. A sister here asked about the roundtable suggestion that has been brought up. Still, it's not working. Some people are still questioning. And there is no way we are seeing a moment or an environment where people will accept at least to sit down and then talk with their different ideas, even though they don't accept. Even that moment is not there. Because the last effort that is going on, I think, is still continuing. People talk about it. A lot of groups that has constituted what is called the Consensus Forum has been speaking about this idea of bringing all the stakeholders together so that the brilliant ideas that each and everyone has is put on the table. And then the best one is taken. Then people work on it. Still is not accepted by individuals and others. So it is like we are gonna be ending up just, if I'm with my group, I just continue being with my group and that's it. That is even adding more suffering, more confusion to the people. Because the unity, if indeed if it's not there, I think this cartel, this criminal cartel are going to continue and is working into their favor. It can keep on pulling us one by one group here, one group here. The last attempt was the one of Tumaini. Certain groups are being pulled here and taken there. Oh, come, I'm going to discuss with you. They rush to Nairobi. Bang. It hit a rock. Dead end. So, I think citizens of South Sudanese are looking to anyone who has jumped up as a leader, who has something that maybe can pull people together. Honestly, indeed, it is the power of the people that has been taken from them. And these are differences. And the fact that people do not agree, do not want even to listen to themselves, the groups or the leaders, our leaders who are in the opposition do not want to listen to us, to themselves, so that the citizens that are already confused in disarray, they can take it as a role model that, oh, our leaders are talking to one another. Let's talk to ourselves. Our leaders are accepting idea that someone different from their group comes up with, and then they sit, discuss, debate. That one will motivate or will tell the citizens that they are people. But honestly, the South Sudanese people are suffering. They have suffered enough. I think this should be ended. you know. Let people have one stand. The people of South Sudan should have that opportunity. Leadership, anyone who has a group, I have the feeling that the group need to be talking to one another. The idea of the consensus is not final. I think everybody should be there. Every group should be there so that people debate there what need to be done or not, so that it is a forum that takes everyone, and then people come out with the very consensus which is going on. Hakim, you have valuable arguments, ideas that you have that could really bring a genuine peace to the people of South Sudan. But I think I have the feeling that keep pushing it to the national competition. Lianu nazel kulu tanyakama ya Hakim, honestly. Debiga tanyakama kede yukuti ya hadde. Nazadu kan maalta zahma de amshi fogo fi zahma. Kush fi zahma wa zahim manas fikra bitak wala fikra bitai gairu. Iya zori yukut fikra de hina. So that we are not left behind. And this one will motivate the citizens even to engage talking to one another. You know. The Hajalana Bisa, I have the feeling that a lot need to be done. Otherwise, these people are not going to move out. They are going to remain. They will destroy the country, which is already gone. And they are determined to do that. Fa'ana bashkurak bardo e fursade, and then this is my first time. I got your invitation from our last conversation the other time, and I think this is a good moment. Thank you so much. Anaf is Shogun. That's why Gibela have to end the work so that I also participate and then greet you. But I appreciate you inviting me up here. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Loco. Really appreciate you coming up here and chipping in on some of the issues. I think that's very, very important. First, I would like to just on the back of our request last time, Zakaro reaching out to Munyomiji, what do you call John Chan. I managed to reach out to John Chan and I spoke to him, and he, without me, being not being transparent about it, he accepted and welcomed my challenge to him, and I just really urge him that we should be focused on building unity. We should not be victimizing everybody and everyone for no substantive reasons and grounds, and I hope that is going to help to open understanding and respect for our communities, for ourselves, so that we can focus our minds and free our minds to focus on really on what's important. So that's what I wanted to share as well. Now, secondly, with the call for us to rally the people, and I think it is telling, and it is actually instructive that the actions of this so-called government in Juba has generated so much discontent. It has generated so much disquiet and just complete, utter disbelief of what they have been doing and continue to do, and taking people for granted. And I think if there is any time that, people need to rally together, this is the moment. This is the moment to show that, no, we have had enough, we have seen enough, and it's not going to be business as usual. They are simply on notice. They are simply on notice, but we cannot put them on notice if we are not organizing. That is really the bottom line. If we are not organizing, if we are not rallying and coming together to prioritize what is important for the people and for our country, and then these people will be simply taking all of us on a ride, and they will continue to يتفوقوا بما يريدون يعني زي they will just begin to speak like what Martin has done, right? Dismissing the people's discontent and بيتفوق حتى بالكذب في العالم. يعني if this were to be in another country, he would not survive a minute. He would be taken out of government. How can a public official speak in such terms that they were assigned by the Bible? I mean, are you taking leave of your brain, of your mind? This is the extent to which, I've just seen, for example, the reactions of our people in different forums. Almost the same. People are disgusted. People are unhappy. They are very discontented because of utterances and because of the behavior of these people who call themselves a government. And the only way we can put them on notice is for us to unite and show a different take on this, that our people can be mobilized and speak the language that will constitute change, that will bring about change, right? And these people will be on notice. For sure and for certain, they will be on notice. And they will be held accountable. That all this discontent, all this suffering of our people will not be in vain. That these people will be held accountable. That change will come. And change هيلاحقهم في أي مكان ماشيين فيهم. Wherever they are going, change will come to them. They will be held accountable. They will be held accountable. That is the message that we should rally behind. We want our change, the people change. People want a change. And from this, position, I extend my hand to everyone who wants change. And that change needs to be premised on key principles that we believe in, that I believe also most people believe in. Those people who want change believe in these principles. Democratic values, liberty, and freedom of our people. That sovereignty inheres in the people. That sovereignty is indivisible, inseparable from the people. That the state does not exist of itself and for itself. That it can only exist if the people so wish it to exist. That if the people so wish it to operate. My message also goes to those groups that describe themselves as the National Consensus Forum, those who are calling for the round table. We say to them, we stand with the principle of dialogue. We are ready to sit down and talk on matters that promote democracy, on matters that promote freedom of our people, on matters that promote liberty of our people. We hold grudges against no one. We have a right to free assembly. We have a right to free association for our people, as we do for the rights of all other peoples and social group country. We want a level playing field. And we want our people to be free to choose who their leaders are, who their people's representatives are, and what constitution they want that would preserve their existence in a state of their choice. Those are the key principles, values that we stand for in EPA, Equatoria People's Alliance. And we want our people to have a say in matters that relate to their existence and governance, and in matters to where exercise of political power is a right, not a right to elites who are unelected, elites who are unrepresentative of our people. So those are the key principles, key values that we stand by in EPA. We genuinely seek to promote these values, and we wish to enter into dialogue with others who recognize this as fundamental rights, inalienable rights of our people. They are inalienable rights of our people. Freedom, liberty, justice, and democracy, which confers the right to choose, confers the right to elect our own people's representatives. Those are the values by which we are defined. There's no longer room for ambiguity. There is no longer room for uncertainty. That the state that we have is a collapsed, failed state, institutionless, and incapable of preserving our existence. It has made our people become subject to being hostages to failures. And we would not recognize anything other than a people's driven constitution making process, but not an elites driven constitution making process or an R-TGONU driven constitution making process. We do not recognize that. They are illegitimate and they cannot appoint themselves to be makers of the constitution for us when our people are not consulted, when our people are not involved in this process. That is our message, and this is the foundation upon which we can begin to coalesce, come together, understand the rights of each other, the perspectives of one another, and then formulate a way forward. This has always been our stand. This has always been the stand that we have advocated for, and it hasn't changed. And without prejudice, we're putting a clarion call out to all of our people to be organized. Because at the end of the day, as we say, the people are the arbiters. They are the final say and authority on the kind of change and outcomes that we want, the outcomes that serve the interests of our people. That is what we want. That is what we want. We want the choices and decisions to be made by our people. And only then we can begin to conceive of a state that preserves the interests of the people, by the people and for the people. And then, only then we can begin to assess that we are a democratic society that values justice, values freedom, values liberty. That is what we stand for. And I hope that those like-minded people who want change are welcome to extend their hands like we extend ours, and we sit down together and discuss how to bring about the change. We have always talked about this as the alternative way forward. How to define the alternative way forward? What's the best way for us to define the alternative way forward? That is inclusive of the different shades of opinion, but that rests decision making ultimately in the hands of the people, our people, who have been excluded, who have been disregarded, who have not been, simply they have been denied their rights. Their rights have been alienated. Their sovereignty has been alienated. And this is our premise for extending this dialogue, this search for consensus and search for change would be fostered as we hopefully move to rally the support for change. But a change that would not be prejudicial, that would be at the expense of the rights of any people, communities, or social groups. A change that would be inclusive, and we mean inclusive, democratically inclusive, and also inclusive in terms of liberties. And we want to democratize liberty and freedom to all the constituent social groups in our country, that they can sit down by their consent to dialogue, to agree to coexist with each other with complete respect for the rights of each other and without prejudice to the rights of others and without encroachment upon the rights of others. So those are the key assumptions that we work with, the presumptions that we take for granted, that underscores what we want to achieve as EPA, Equatorial People's Alliance, for the good and better future preservation of Equatoria, as well as for the good and better relationships and future preservation of all of South Sudan in their different social existence. So I welcome all the voices that are urging for us to come together, and we have always never been against running the people of South Sudan in all of their diversity. But it may not have been possible for us to get the message, to the people in a manner that they can simply understand what it is. Is also the complexity of our social existence and structures that tends to prejudice who the speaker is without, differentiating between a message and the speaker and the content of the message. But otherwise, we don't want to be, exclusive, exclude others from the process of dialogue, from the process of having a say on matters that affect their lives, their future, and their posterity. So we all want to be inclusive in this, and I think if we agree these premises, I think we can make a good start. We have tried in the past. We have tried, but then not much progress was being made, and that really meant that we have to reprioritize and try to focus on our constituency. So that if we make progress, it will be meaningful in the context of our own existence as a social group, but without prejudice to other social groups, because we would want to extend this the same, because democracy, liberty, freedom are inalienable. They're inherent in the people. They inhere in us. They inhere in other social groups as well. And why would it be so impossible a task for other social groups to recognize these values, that we can operate and behave towards each other on the basis of these premises, that we can recognize each other's rights to existence, to liberty, to freedom, and to making choices. And that is all in the interest of peace, peaceful coexistence. Without much, to add, I thank you all again once more, and I thank you, Loco, for adding your voice, and for the voices for our sister, Sylvia, who expressed the same sentiments, and perhaps also some of those who are listening here in this room. I hope you get this message. We cannot continue to tolerate criminality to be, holding us hostage. We need to break free from that criminality. We want to break free to leave a legacy of justice, freedom, and democracy to our people. So thank you, and welcome Daniel and other people who also want to join us here and share their messages. So thank you very much. Daniel, if your time allows, you can jump in, chip in as well. Thank you.
I think Daniel dropped. So Laku, go ahead, Loco.
Yeah, I just want to give my thanks once again for you guys. The nice discussion, and it's worthy. Indeed, it's difficult moments. We need ourselves. By all means, a lot need to be done. We need to be doing it together. We have to forge a way. Otherwise, these cartels are going to remain there if we are in disarray like that. All our good ideas that we have, we need really to have them, by all means, packed together, and through the negotiation. The democracy in Africa is challenged. It's in very big question mark. Even when we ended up, we tested practicing democracy during the referendum. I think a lot of fierce fight, a lot of pain, a lot of misunderstanding happened before it ended up like that. And they are continuing like that. And then if you see the geopolitical calculations or calculus that is taking place in Africa also, the word democracy is what they don't want to listen. That's another planet. The democracy, I think, needs a really, really serious fight. Serious fight that people have to take on to in South Sudan And then in some parts of Africa that are still believing in democracy, seriously has to be taken, a fight, and then defended so that it's put in place and then practiced. Going on forward, I think the idea of talking to one another, negotiating a way of us putting that formidable force to fight how long it takes to fight for those values, good values of democracy. We need to continue negotiating ourselves, negotiating among ourselves, and come as one. That's what I believe in it. One day we shall be there, but we should be continuing negotiating. I'm so humbled to be here, and then I will be stepping down, and I will be available. As I will be following you. If I get a chance, I will be participating, and then we can be sharing our ideas and our feelings, frustrations, everything. We need ourselves. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Loco. I think I couldn't agree more. Yes, it takes more than one to clap hand. You know, it takes more than one hand to clap to make a noise, to get a message across. And this is indisputable. And not only that, democracy, like you said, is not. It's not an easy battle. It's not an easy challenge. It is, however, important and vital for building of nations, for building of countries. And it takes time and effort. It also takes commitment. And it depends on our constituency. Because if you like, say, for example, if you were to assess and look at which are, you know, what are the conditions, what are the requirements for staging a democratic transformation or for making democratic transformation to happen? What are the prerequisites that you need in order for that to work for you? If you just take this model and example and apply it to all of South Sudan and just ask the question, الحاضنة للمجتمع الديمقراطي بتلقاه وين؟ Where can you foster democratic values, democratic principles, and the ideas and principles of justice, freedom, liberty, and so on? Where can this be fostered in South Sudan? Is this something that you can just do randomly? Right? Just go out and start to shout from the top of the roofs and say, let's be democratic, let's put together a democratic society, let's have a democratic government in South Sudan. Is that feasible? Is that realistic? Those are some of the questions we should ask ourselves. Do we have a constituency that has the prerequisites for democratic transformation? Right? That recognizes and values the agenda and proposition of democratic transformation in decision making, in democratizing liberty, democratizing freedom of choice, freedom of association, and so on. So you might start to think about how realistic this is. And that's one of the reasons that you could look at the society as a whole and look at our constituency and begin to ask yourself these questions. Does our constituency have some of the prerequisites for democratic transformation. For example, being inclusive, being diverse, being tolerant of different views, and also looking at this as an asset to preserve this diversity, to preserve this inclusivity, to preserve this, tolerance for diversity, tolerance for managing this diversity as intrinsic to the society that we belong to or we come from, right? So if you take these as the key pillars of change towards democratic transformation, then it should not be a hurdle for intellectuals, for professionals, for those who are knowledgeable and understand the value of diversity, the value of democracy, the value of inclusivity, tolerance, and so on, for them to blend together to try to bring that kind of change, because they understand it, they can perceive it, they have it as a vision, and they really want to make it work for their society, right? If we were to make this work for us in Equatoria, would it be against anybody? Would it be a threat to anyone? Why should it be a threat to anybody? Why should it be a threat to anyone? It shouldn't be a threat, right? And to bolster all this work and make it really effective, you need organization. You need us to be organized and to think in terms of being agents of change. It's not that we're trying to create a legacy. We're trying to protect our gains. المكتسبات اللي عندنا already احنا عندنا في المجتمع بتاعنا. المكتسبات that how do you preserve and continue to preserve them for the next posterity, the future generations, and so on, right? That is where we need to be at. That is where we need to be working at, and it's worth it. We do have a lot of capacity, like I always keep saying. We have a lot of capacity, but it is capacity that is not utilized. We're not using and operating at our full capacity. And it will always be like that in society, where you start to build and operate your capacity to the fullest extent possible with time. You've got to start somewhere. You've got to start somewhere, build that capacity, and then make it more and more attractive with time, because you're building on the gains. And maybe the social existence is also very supportive of that. The al-hadina, al-ijtimaiya, is supportive of that. And I think if you look at all of these factors together, it always gives me belief that Equatoria does have what it takes to be at the lead of democratizing the country, to be at the lead of democratizing Equatoria even further, and ensuring that it becomes intrinsic to our values, because we are already diverse, we are already inclusive, and we already possess a kind of a social fabric that has forged over time. I'm not against, the rights, inalienable rights of others, of other social groups. But where I come from, where at the end of the day, if I want to be a representative of the people, I would have to stand in my constituency. At least today, I would have to stand in my constituency. So that is fundamental to any political process, any political proposition, as it relates to democracy, as it relates to change. And that's why there's always the argument which says charity begins at home. Charity starts at home. If you have a good home, other people would like to build homes similar to yours. If you have a great home, other people would want to also build great homes. Because what is good is what people want. So why don't you build something good that other people would like to have? We have to build our home, make it good, make it great, so that other people would also want to emulate us. Or they might see that this is attractive. This is really attractive and good. You know, they become friendly neighbors. They become motivated, and you can live together with each other peacefully, right? So my appeal always goes to Equatorians, my people, my constituency. We want our people to take lead. Not that you want to compete with anybody, not that you want to show others that you are better than them. That's not the aim. I think our aim is just to be as good as any society for our people and for all of humanity. And that means you have to free yourself from being a hostage. If you are a hostage, you cannot exercise freedom. You cannot exercise liberty. We can't do this if you are held hostage to a failed system in which your own liberty is taken away from you, in which your own freedom is taken away from you. And these are not simple, easy things to live with. They are not easy things to live with. And perhaps that's where the burden comes. You know, it's a huge burden. Like in the case of South Sudan, it's a failed state. The burden is so huge. But there's no way you can run from it. We can't run away from it. We have to take the burden on. And we have to talk to each other. Because there's always room for us to work together. There's always room for us together. My kind of biggest issue in Equatoria is that we are not making use of our capacity. We're not working together. It's not a question about who should be the leader. You know, we are all leaders in our own different ways. We're leaders, all of us. Leaders by ideas, leaders by contributing something good that can benefit our society, because we are at this stage in development where we still have to struggle. You know, we are the ones who are having the burden of a struggle, so that a better future would come for the next generation. And the next generation is your children, is your nieces, your cousins, children of your cousins, and so on and so forth, right? If you are dispossessed today of many things that go for granted in life, you would not want your children to be dispossessed of what you have been dispossessed, right? You would want them to have a better future. And you would struggle always to create better opportunities for your your children, right, in society, right? Where are our children? What kind of society are we going to be, bequeathing to them in terms of systems, in terms of institutions, in terms of governance, in terms of enjoyment of their rights, their inalienable rights? All of these things will not just come of their own, unfortunately. We have to work to create the systems that will preserve these rights, these values, these inalienable rights, and all that. We need to create the institutions, the system that would ensure that these rights that inhere in all of our different social groups are enjoyed by the members of these different social groups, including ours. And that takes, effort, takes time. And we know that today we don't have a government. The government is meant to be the ultimate representation of the mechanisms of how we want to manage the affairs of our existence, right? And we know that we don't have that today to our fullest expectations. We don't have that. And so we need to bring about that government. But then how would we bring that government about? We have to bring that government about by what we do today. It can be incrementally, it can be gradually, but we have to deliver certain things as we go along, right? And that has to be visible, right? The gains, the incremental gains, the cumulative gains that will ultimately, maybe in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, will culminate in having that ideal government that we aspire to achieve. Or it could be in lesser time than that, right? There are these concepts in the modern world where you measure, you create a vision or an investment, and then you apply resources to it to deliver certain outcomes, right? And you apply the resources to bring and deliver those outcomes. Some of those outcomes might be in a year's time, some of those outcomes might be in 2 years' time, and so on. So there's a kind of transitioning process, you have your long-term vision, and then you have these that you want to have in the interim so that you can start to cumulatively build towards your target, right? That needs to be planned. That needs to be, the right amount of combination of resources, the right amount of combination of leadership, the right amount of combination of capacity to deliver those outcomes, right? So those are the kind of issues that we want to address ourselves to, that we can do so by bringing the knowledge and expertise of all of us and put that knowledge and expertise together to work for us. That we recognize the contributions of each other. In the bigger scheme of things, you're putting the pieces of the puzzle together so that you can see the bigger picture, and you see if you put this big picture together over time, then the chances are that you will get the outcomes that you want. So it won't just happen randomly, right? It won't just happen randomly. Even science about random things that happen, but there are certain things that are controllable. There are certain things that are controllable. You can control certain variables, certain things, to get certain outcomes. That doesn't mean that randomness does not, or that randomness disappears altogether. No. There will be random things that happen in life that you may not have control over, right? But at least you can exercise control over those sort of things that you are able to control. So those are the kind of maybe issues that we ourselves as Equatorians, as South Sudanese, should revisit and rethink, and then, apply the right attention of detail, the right attention of focus, so that we can start to make progress. So progress, like, there's a saying, an English saying that if you don't have a plan, then you are planning to fail. So having no plan is actually a plan to fail. But if you have a plan, then there is every chance of achieving the objectives of that plan. And the plan does not remain constant. The plan will need to change. The plan will need to be evolved. The plan will need to be adjusted with inputs of different resources at different points in time. So those are the kind of issues that we want to think through structurally. And perhaps that's why people need to organize themselves and know, why do we need an organization? We need an organization because it's a vehicle for teamwork. Because we recognize that individually, we may not achieve anything. We cannot achieve everything just working individually, right? There are certain type of problems that can be addressed through teamwork. There are certain type of problems that can be addressed just as an individual. So, in other words, for a certain magnitude of problems, you need a critical mass in society to apply itself to that in order to bring about that kind of change. So that change won't just happen randomly. That change will have to be planned and then executed. So that's where we are as Equatorians. And this is where, where I always say and think that if Equatorians can lend themselves, those in diaspora, in Canada, in Australia, in the USA, and those back home, if they can understand the magnitude of the challenge that we're facing in Equatoria, which has become an existential threat, if they can understand the magnitude of that challenge, then possibly out of self-interest for existence, when your existence is challenged, you could start to begin to worry about your future, about your future of your children, about the future of your community, about, because these are all driven by the fact that there's exclusion. You are not engaged in the constitution-making process, for example. You are not participating in decision-making. You are not having the right leaders that represent your views, that you can consult with, or they can consult with you, and so on and so forth. Those are dangers, persistent dangers, systemic dangers that we see could potentially put our lives at stake. And therefore, we should be responding to those issues by organizing ourselves, Because the reason why would we want to organize ourselves as Equatorians? It's because we exist as a certain social fabric, as a people in Equatoria that have, developed a certain fabric that over time we are the result of our history. It's a continuation of Equatoria's history that our people from different diverse social groups, they have lived together for a long time, have started to form and forge a sense of identity of being one people. That has progressed to reflect certain social dimensions, like, we come together as Equatorians, we recognize that we are together as Equatorians, and there seem to be, a form of existence that represent us as a one social group. And those are the kind of things that we start to respond to, say, look, this way of life is now at danger. It's at risk, and we need to protect it. And it's inalienable right. It's our inalienable right to live as a society and to protect ourselves and to preserve our values, our rights, our lands, and so on. It's not against anybody. It's for our own existence. And therefore, why would it not be appropriate for us to organize ourselves as Equatorians? Because right now there is no umbrella system ruling over us that protects and preserves all of our rights. That is non-existent. So why would we not then start to organize ourselves in our region, in our social existence as Equatorians, but not again as an enemy to anybody, no. As a force for good, for preservation of our existence that has forged and formed over, a long period of time. And simply because we are not able to exercise our freedoms. We are not able to exercise also our liberties, right? So should we have to wait or leave this to be subject to random, evolution? Or should we be able to intervene in this process and try to direct it and have a directional steer in terms of how we want to, preserve all of this complex social existence known as Equatoria? So, and I think there is therefore primacy and there is legitimacy for why we can organize ourselves as Equatorians so that we prioritize what's good for us as Equatorians and also what is good for South Sudan, because organizing ourselves as Equatorian doesn't exclude us from having conversations and participating in the affairs of South Sudan, at least as far as the current situation is concerned, right? But we can start to speak to the rest of South Sudan as a people and bring focus and attention to this issue that is not being recognized, is that we are a people and people come first, not the elites that want to extend themselves in power. Only at our expense, only at our confusion. If we don't know our rights, then they can operate and continue to behave like they want, without us having any meaningful objection to that. And so, and I think it's just that, that we need a vision for ourselves as Equatorians. We need a vision and people who believe in this vision, who can put themselves at the front line of this and advocate for it and hopefully attract Equatorians to see what they are missing. And then if Equatorians recognize what is missing and what they are missing, and they start to take action rather than just sat on the fence, then at least, would have materially, contributed to motivating change in Equatoria and in the country that we call South Sudan. Given the lineage in our history, where did it all start? Did it not start in Tori? Did it not start in Juba? Did it not start in Anzara? All this idea of becoming a South Sudan nation, where did it all start? So my brothers, Equatorians and South Sudanese, people have got to recognize that we need to come together for justice, for liberty, for democracy, so that we can effect change, a change that is good for all of us. And that is respectful of the rights, inalienable rights of all of our peoples, all of our different social groups who are entitled to the right to enjoyment of rights, the right to live in peace and to catch up with the rest of the world. Otherwise, if we are under Riek Machar and the Salva Kiir, the world is going and we won't be able to catch up with it, because we have these people who are sat on our heads. They're sitting on us. They're not letting us to breathe. They just simply, sat on us and taken up all of our resources, control the security, control the army, use all of these tools to suppress us, to kill with impunity, because they're not being held accountable. Even among themselves, they don't hold each other accountable. They just want to, milk the system, milk our public resources with impunity, no accountability whatsoever. So is this how we want to continue to live in South Sudan? Is this how we want to let go of our rights and do nothing, simply do nothing and just sit? Is that satisfying? Is that rewarding? What other things, what else is in life that is so important for us to contribute to? Is it not worth it? Is it not worth a cause to bring about change? I think it is. In my view, it is. I believe that we have a role to play. All of us can play their role. And we just need to bring all of this together and put it together and build the capacity that we need in order to bring about change. So I think I'll stop here. Give chance to others to interject. Thank you.